the reason why I didn't want to ever become a publisher in the past when I was a freelance designer is the perceived aspect of it's a lot of minutia, it's a lot of paperwork, it's a lot of spreadsheets, it's a lot of the boring side. But starting your own business has a lot of creativity, just already from the little anecdotes of coming up with a name, a logo. That part's obviously very fun. And then I find that I get energy and I get juiced when I'm learning something new that's applicable to my passions.
Welcome to Masters of Crowdfunding. You got Bark here today, and I just finished up my interview with Jay Cormier, who is the founder of Off the Page Games. I love this conversation. We talked about how he went from being a freelance board game designer and having a part-time job to then making the leap and launching his own publishing company and launching his first game on Kickstarter. And since then, he's actually raised over 1.7 million Canadian dollars on Kickstarter. He's built up a loyal following, and he talks about how he did it. And we get a lot into the nitty-gritty of how he actually built his board game business, even things like how to think about creating expansions within your game and why that actually makes it more attractive from a business sense. And he also shares a technique, I would say, for making his campaigns more engaging. And this is something that I've never heard anyone talk about before, the way that he does it. So you got to listen to the whole episode to find out what it is. All right, I hope you enjoy this episode of Masters of Crowdfunding with Jay Cormier. All right, we're live. Jay, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
All right, so I want to start at the beginning. You were a board game designer for years, while you were also working part-time at your job as well. And then 5 years ago, you decided to launch your very own game. And I'd love for you just to tell us the story of how, you went from board game designer to then starting Off the Page Games.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was designing as a freelance designer, since 2005, I guess, officially. I mean, you could always argue that I've been designing games my whole life, but officially pitching and all this kind of stuff. And never had any aspirations of being a publisher, would even say so much. Like, no, I don't want to be a publisher, because I really enjoyed designing. And had about 20 games or so published as a freelance designer with many different publishers. Met Matt Kint, who is the creator of the comic book Mind Management at Gen Con, and he was a fan of one of our games, and I was a fan of all his stuff, to the point, just to really drive it home, that I had 2 pieces of his art hanging in my house before this. I had met him at Gen Con, so I really like him. And so we played games together all night. It was just awesome. It was just really hanging out casual. And he said offhandedly, man, it'd be so cool if there was a Mind Management board game. And Sen and I, my partner, Sen, design partner, said, well, can we do it? Can we design that? And he was like, would you? I'm like, yes. And we were like, okay. So we did the whole handshake. All right, it's a deal. But it took about 5 years to find the game. We failed many times and just couldn't figure out what the game was. It was always it had the characters and the places and the, situations from the comic in a game form, but it didn't feel like a Mind Management game. It felt like a Pandemic clone or some other, it just felt like moving pieces around. It didn't feel, until we came up with the hidden movement mechanic. We didn't come up with that, but until we decided on that for this game, that started to really feel like you were manipulating people's minds. You're like, oh, I bet you he thinks I'm going this way. I'm going to go this way. And you really feel like it. And we're like, oh, it felt really good. So we designed it. We pitched it to publishers. We actually signed with a really new publisher, and we were done. We're like, all right, let's move on to the next game, and we'll see that when it gets published. And then 6 months later, that publisher went under. And so we're like, oh no. So now we had a meeting with the 3 of us, and me and Matt. Well, now what do we do? Do we remember any of the other publishers that had interest? Yeah, we made notes of those. Okay, which one should we go to? And we're kind of chatting and brainstorming. And Matt was the one that actually said, why don't we just do it ourselves? He's like, I have a graphic design background. I'll design it, the art, and to do the graphic design. Why don't you publish it? And I said, well, let me think about that. And so I thought about it, and I thought, Sen has a full-time job. At the time, I had a full-time job. And I'm like, but Sen had a full-time job as well, teaching. And I'm like, I thought about it, and I said, you know what? I think I can make a go of this. So I asked, actually, I might have been just part-time, actually. Yeah, I was part-time at that time. Yeah, when this company said, absolutely. And so I asked Sen, I'm like, Sen, I'll do it if you let me do it. I want to do it. I don't want to do it. Not that I don't want to do it with you, but you got your own timelines and restrictions and stuff. He's like, no, go for it. Do it. And so I'm like, all right, because I'm starting a company. And then the next part of my head was like, okay, so am I just making this game and that's it? Is this my, like, because it's like a dream project, like to make, not only design a game in a world that I love, the comics, one of my favorite comics of all time. Now I'm going to be publishing content in that world. Like, if this is like getting to a wish list kind of dream thing. And so I'm like, okay, so what kind of company am I going to be? And this is where the branding and the kind of the customer loyalty thing starts to pay off already, starting with the branding. And I took some good time to think about who am I? What do I want to be as a company as a publisher? And I find too often one of my pet peeves in board game world is that so many publishers are their mottos are indistinguishable from each other. We make great games, or, great, easy to learn, hard to master, or whatever these buzzword phrases are. That it's just like, like you could look at a huge store of games and you couldn't tell which game is from which publisher. With one exception, I think. Maybe there's a couple more, but at least one big one stands out in my mind. Do you have any in your head that you can think of that's like the publisher their brand is super strong with regards to kinds of games they make? Putting you on the spot, just thinking.
Yeah, you're probably asking the wrong person because I'm not a huge gamer actually. Personally. Yeah.
It's Restoration Games. I find has a huge brand because right in the name of the company, Restoration Games, they restore old games and add new modern mechanics to them and release them as, so you get a bit of nostalgia. Like, it's a huge brand that makes sense immediately when you see their games. So that I'm like, that's really a good a good hook to hang your hat on. And so I'm like, well, what's my hook going to be? And I just thought, well, I'm doing one based off of comic books. What if I did all my games were based off of like indie comic books, like kind of creator own type stuff? And so I just said, that's what it is. Came up with the name, had to brainstorm that for a while. Off the page games, because they were off the comic book pages, and the logo kind of looks like a comic book. So, and then I was off to the races, and we just, started making it from there.
So, but you were a designer for so long, and you also were doing it with while having your job. I mean, at some point, like you said, you went part-time. What do you think it was that made you, like actually be like, okay, I'm going all in on this and starting my own business? Was there fear involved?
Oh yeah.
That was coming up there. Just like, we'll talk about that, because there's so many people that I know want to, create their own company. And anyways, I'll let you speak to it.
Sure. I think it was more the fear of regret. I was presented with an opportunity and a possibility of a thing that could happen. And it would have been something that in hindsight, I would have been, man, I wish I did that. I wonder what would have happened if I did say, yeah, I'm going to publish it. Well, what would that look like? Well, I'm in that. What would it look like? And I made it. I mean, obviously it was successful, and I was very fortunate that everything kind of lined up. But the reason why I didn't want to ever become a publisher in the past when I was a freelance designer is the perceived aspect of it's a lot of minutia, it's a lot of paperwork, it's a lot of spreadsheets, it's a lot of the boring side of the board game industry. And that's why I was like, But starting your own business has a lot of creativity, just already from the little anecdotes of coming up with a name, a logo. That part's obviously very fun. And then I find that I get energy and I get juiced when I'm learning something new that's applicable to my passions. And so this is just an extension of that. Obviously, I'm always learning when it comes to game design. There's always things you're learning about how that's the whole point of playtesting and stuff. Like, you're learning. And so I always get juiced from playtesting games. But now I realize, as I started this business, I started getting juiced with all this learning of how to make a business. And so much so that as soon as I started, I had the wherewithal to create a YouTube series. And every single week, I made a new episode, and it was called How to Start a Board Game Company. And
I watched it.
Oh, cool.
All right, I didn't watch the whole thing, but getting ready for it.
It was great because it was kind of like a little bit of promotion, but to a very niche audience. And B, it was a great thing to keep me on track, because every week I had to, just personally, had to have a new video to go. So what am I going to do? I'll talk about marketing. Well, that means I have to get my marketing stuff ready. Oh, I got to, so I kept like pushing myself with these deadlines. It was a wonderful way to stay on topic, but and make sure I got everything done. So I guess I was getting motivated, even though there was a lot of fear and stuff like that. That never scares me. Like, oh my God, what if this? What if that? I don't really get stuck in that headspace. I get more like, how am I going to win? How am I going to succeed? What am I going to do? It might take longer. I'm not on a specific schedule. That's where usually you get stung is if like, I'm going to launch this next week or whatever. The game was fully designed. Like it's signed, it's fully designed. I still at that moment when I became a board game publisher, I said, okay, we're not releasing this on Kickstarter for 9 more months. So I still gave 9 more months because we hadn't done any marketing or anything because nobody knew about us. I mean, people know about us as designers, I guess, but not as this company or this game yet.
Right, because completely new. Yeah, but you launched and you did, 191,000 Canadian dollars.
Yeah.
Was at that point, did you go full time into your business? No.
I didn't do that till this past February.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So the whole time you were working part time at your working part time at another job?
Yeah.
What were you doing?
I was, I guess I'm not anymore, a video specialist, like making videos for training and internal purposes for a
That's awesome.
large company. Yeah.
And so why did you decide to, stay in the job until this past campaign, or the success of this past campaign?
I have twin 7-year-old boys. And so the, luxury of that I could have a guaranteed income with benefits and all this stuff was still huge. And the fact that with my publishing company, by keeping it as a part-time thing, I didn't have to have a schedule of releases. If you look at I've got 3 games. The third one's not out yet, but the Kickstarter's done. And they all launched 2 years apart from each other. 2020, 2022, and 2024. And so that's because I was part-time. Like if I was full-time, maybe I could do 1 a year or more. But that's a benefit of going part-time is I can take as long as I need to take to get it ready. There's no rush. There's no mandatory. But if I had to feed my kids and I needed this money, then things would have had to launch a lot earlier, and that would have probably guaranteed would have impacted the quality in some way.
Right. It makes a lot of sense. It's like you're not depending on the income from the business in order to.
Yeah, and we'll probably get to it, but that's now the scary part. Now that I have gone full-time in February, which is different.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a nice natural extension to the next question. Is why now? Why go full-time now?
Well, so the job that I was at for 27 years. And then in February, they let me go. And so with a nice little severance package. And so half of me likes to think that they know 100% that I've been doing this because I always talk about it and I share my Kickstarters with them and all this stuff. Half of me wants to think they were doing this to me as a favor. Like, just go do it. Just go do the thing you want to do.
Yeah, a little push. Yeah.
That's what I like to think.
Yeah.
Because the severance now gives me an extra cushion for a certain period of time to now try this. So when I got let go, I guess I said, well, this is my job now. I'm going to be doing this full time. So now I'm trying to ramp up my production. Now I have to get more things on the docket.
Well, awesome. I think it's, you've now made the leap, maybe not voluntarily.
Yes, exactly.
But I love that. I will choose to believe as well. They gave you a little push.
Me too.
Because they believed in you to go out there. But let's go back to the second, I guess, I don't even know if I guess it's not really the second game. It's the expansion that you launched.
Right.
Mind Management, the Secret Missions.
Yeah.
So this campaign was huge.
Yeah.
It did essentially 4 times as much as the first campaign. And the core thing that was different was that it was an expansion. You were selling the Secret Mission cards, correct?
Yes and no. Let me give you some context.
And the wooden pieces? Okay, yeah. All right, yeah. Give me some context.
So first off, the Secret Mission, in the base game of Mind Management, even in the first print run of it, and the current print runs of all of them, there are 10 secret codes hidden amongst the art in the game. And if you find one of those secret codes, and some of them are hidden very cleverly and hard, and if you find them, in the rule book it says, if you ever find a secret code, go to this website, and you go to a website and enter the code, and you're given a new card that you can print out yourself and add to the game.
That's so cool.
And so all we did is we just took those things and printed them and offered them it wasn't even new content necessarily. It was things that you had access to, but now they're professionally printed and look nicer. And we sealed them in envelopes. So if you wanted to preserve the mystery of finding them, now it'll say, when you go to that website, it'll say open envelope 4. You're like, ooh, what's in here? And you add it to your game.
Okay. Got it.
So that's that. Now we're getting to the end of the print run of the first print run, and I'm just starting the plans of okay, we got to get another print run going. And so I'm going back and forth with my manufacturer. Let's figure out another print run. How many should I order and stuff? And what lands on, and I know the dates of this, February 2nd, February 2nd yeah, February, yeah, I think it's February 2nd. Shut Up, Sit Down launched a review of my management, and they called it a masterpiece, and they were gushing like crazy about it, like just absolute bananas. And when you know it, immediately now we're 100% out of stock.
Right.
And so within 3 days of that review landing, and on the February 2nd, I had no idea another Kickstarter was coming. Like zero, not even a possibility. And then within 3 days, I had a Kickstarter up and running.
Holy moly.
Within 3 days. Yeah, this is the benefit of a small company, of a one-person company. All the assets were done from the previous campaign, had to add a few new ones to get it going. And that was it. And I launched it, told all of my content creators that this was launching. Didn't have any new reviews, but the benefit always, and you'll see this time and time again, of any Kickstarter that's a reprint, they often do better, because now there's not previews and first looks in Kickstarter videos. The reviews are out. Actual reviews are out. And so that the biggest challenge with Kickstarter always is this going to be a good game? And you never know.
Right.
But when it's a reprint, well, you do know. People have reviewed it. There's tons and tons of reviews out. And at the right at the top of my Kickstarter page was the list of where my management ranked in the top 10 of that previous year. And it's like, so many put it at number 1, so many put it at number 2, etc. So like there was this huge like testimonials of all these content creators saying this is a great game. So, and the fact that now the deluxe is available again, which was what was sought after, because it was just really gorgeous looking fold out wallet and with, game trays, like it was just gorgeous. And so that, $781,000 in 2 weeks. And then what's also funny about that is 5 days into that campaign, Matt Kind was like, I want to add playing cards to this campaign. Like, we only have like 10 days left. And I'm like, what do you add playing cards? So we talked about it. We made up this whole new deck within 2 days and added it for the last week. And now there's these mind management playing cards that are really bizarre playing cards that have rules on every single card that if you choose to activate them, do something weird in any traditional classic game you play with cards.
Was the plan from the beginning to do a reprint, or did you play that by ear?
I was going to do a reprint because we were sold out, but just a normal, like, me pay for it and then ship it in and it'll be in the stores.
Right, but not do another Kickstarter.
No, never.
And so you chose to do the Kickstarter because that review came out.
Exactly, yeah. Within 3 days, pivoted, and there was definitely people applauding that, of like, now that's how you run a business. Like, there's huge demand, there's zero supply, do another Kickstarter. That's like the best time in the world to do a Kickstarter.
So why go Kickstarter instead of just sell it on your own website at that point?
I guess, you get the cash flow to pay for it, because that was a huge print run. It was like 10,000, well, it was like 15,000 more units I ended up having to print. Like that would cost a lot of money. So you get that cash flow up front.
Oh, right. I mean, instead of doing like a pre-order on your own website.
Oh, well, that's what Kickstarter is. And then Kickstarter is not just a pre-order site. It's like, you get all the attention that Kickstarter gives as well. Like, yes, I get all the marketing that goes behind from any content creator that's saying, hey, this is now back on Kickstarter, because I told them about it. And so that's all, you get all that. Plus you get all of the Kickstarter extra ads. Like, they go on to recommend and all these internal Kickstarter things that people stumble upon your campaign. Like, oh, this is at 500, 600, 800, 700,000. What is this? And then, so you get more sales from just being on Kickstarter. If I was just on my own site, I'd be shouting into the wind. I'm like, hey, come check out this site over here. There's some games that you can pre-order. Right.
No, I'm in total agreement. Yeah. I think there's always some people are like, at this point, because you did the original Kickstarter, right? And then it was successful, and then it got the review, and now that is driving a whole bunch of demand.
Yeah.
It's like, well, maybe I'll just launch this on my own website at this point, because
I guess
like you have created some of that demand already, but you can create even more demand by putting it on Kickstarter.
I think
I would agree with you as well.
Yeah.
Then it becomes an event. I think you also ran that campaign for only, I think it was 12 days.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to get them in so I could get the reprint happening ASAP.
What else did you do to market that second one? Was it all driven by the content creators driving traffic and Kickstarter's traffic?
Yeah, that's it. There was no other real big marketing push for that, because the demand was ridiculously high after. Shut Up, Sit Down is probably one of the biggest movers of when they do a positive review on something, like, sales go up. And so when they say it's a masterpiece, now, like, everyone's got to check that out. You know what I mean? Like, it was, so that's almost enough, just that. And then all the other reviews of everyone else calling it top 10 for the year. Just, if you didn't have it and hadn't heard of it up to then, you're like, well, now I got to get this. That's awesome. And it is.
So from a business perspective, it seems like a great idea to, design the game to be expandable, to like have expansions. I mean, how much does that play into the design, like when you are designing a game?
It's funny that you asked that, because it's been a big learning lessons from the first 2 games to my 3rd game. So my management has a thing inside it called the shift system. And my management is a one versus many game. And one of the challenges or potential flaws of a one versus many game is that if one of your buddies is really good at one of those sides, sometimes you'd be like, I don't play that game with you because you're just too good at that. And there's nothing you can do because he's good at that side. And so what we did was called the shift system, and it's got 14 sealed packages, 7 for one side, 7 for the other side. And whoever loses gets to open a package, and it's basically a little handicap. Like you get an extra thing. You get some more cards, some more components, and some more rules to help you out in your next game. And it becomes not a legacy game, not a campaign game, but just this concept where you get to choose how many of these extra packages you want based on how good the other player is. And so that had already built in effectively 14 expansions built right into the box. So now my lesson I learned from this is that I would never do that again that way. It made it more of a very unique kind of product, and maybe that helped with the sales and everything. I still would have offered those, but I probably would have separated it into a separate own expansion box. Here's the shift system as an entire box. Buy these 14 as a box, or break them down into smaller boxes or whatever. But
and then sell that over time?
Just sell that as a separate SKU, a separate unit. Yeah, because the challenge is that to get into mine management now, it's a $60 US price tag, which is, average for a game nowadays. But imagine I could have got that down to $40. How many more people would have bought the game? How better sales it might have, who knows, in Barnes & Noble, because it's $40, and now you're targeting that kind of a customer. That's going to sell a lot better than a $60 game and be a smaller box, and everything would have been made it more accessible, basically. And so by making it $60, it just makes it less accessible of a game to more, people. So that's the lesson, and that's what we took for as a lesson in our game that just finished on campaign Core of Discovery, which we talked about. But the concept there is we created what's the core game, and then we added 4 more expansions. So now that's the way to do it, because I even remember there's a guy named Bauer, and he does these reviews of Kickstarter campaigns. They're these fun little videos that he does, and he actually reviews how they're laid out and all this, because I'm as a creator, I find him very intriguing to watch. And he called he did my Core of Discovery review, and he said, it says $39, which it is for the game. And he says, that's a great Trojan horse, because you get in, you're like, 39, this is great. And you scroll down, you're like, oh yeah, there's a deluxe, so it's 59. Of course, makes sense, 59, wooden, everything looks amazing, wooden components. Oh yeah, got to get it. Easy money. And you go down to the ultimate edition, and all of a sudden it's $120 or $129. But you look at it, it's like, 4 expansions, each one's $15. That's 60 more. Yeah. So all of a sudden you thought you were spending 40, and now you're spending $129. And it's like, and to him, it's a no brainer. It's like, I'm in, I gotta get it. So I thought that's the way I want to go from now on, is like, make it a nice, affordable thing. That especially makes it more attractive in retail, is my thought too, as well.
Yeah. I like it. The Trojan horse strategy.
Yeah.
You can call it, to get in there. I mean, do you plan to continue to create additional expansions as well for the game?
There is something in the works that I don't want to necessarily announce it, but I'm working on something that I'd like to have, that it's a system that might work with every single one of my games. And so, yeah, there's potentially more content coming.
Okay, what a tease. But I get it. It's coming.
Well, the idea is there. We got to see if it works, I guess.
Yeah. No, I'm really curious to think about, the longevity of a game. Can you continue to create expansions to continue to make it, new and interesting for players? Well,
sorry. Yeah. One of the benefits of doing the expansion concept is when talking with my distributors, they said that, how they do it is, and they love Core Discovery having 4 expansions, because they say, we're going to announce it in our newsletter and push it on this month when it launches. And then the next month we'll say, hey, here's expansion 1, and it gets more attention. And then next month, another expansion. So every time you have an expansion, it's another announcement to the retailers saying, this is still around. This is something. Oh, I got to get that. And it becomes a thing, more of a reminder. Like, it's always there. Like, wow, this Core Discovery's really stick around. And everyone knows once you have expansions, it implies a more successful game if it has expansions, to warrant having expansions. But sometimes now with the Kickstarter model, expansions now come sometimes in the campaign itself. So
Right, exactly. And so just to be clear on that, yeah, you had created the 4 expansions. You launched that with the Kickstarter.
we didn't have to. We could have included it all in one box, and here's the whole game. I was trying to figure out it has 6 chapters basically, and we could have been just the one chapter is the core game, and we thought I think it would be better to have the first 2 chapters in the core game, and then the next 4 are separate, or we could have combined 2 of them into one. Like, we had all these different options where we went, but it made sense branding wise to have each expansion be its own standalone, each chapter be its own expansion.
So I want to talk about, you've had all these successful campaigns on Kickstarter, and you've really built a loyal following as well. And it's really not easy to do. It's difficult. And I'd love for you to talk about how you actually do that. Like what did you do intentionally to create, either intentionally or unintentionally, that you've now learned to create a loyal following?
The 2 biggest things I'll say are being genuine and transparency are my 2 biggest takeaways from that. Is that I find that I like to think that I'm a very genuine person, and I genuinely want to make a great game, and I genuinely want to make sure the backers have the best experience. And so I think that comes through in my communication. So if you I'd like to back a lot of projects, not just because I like the games, or not because I do want to support some of the people, but also because I want to see how they're communicating. And I study them, and especially a great tip for any upcoming creator of a Kickstarter is to follow a bunch, not just to see how they're doing, but to really see how they communicate. And you can see there's some differences. Some treat it very business-like, and it's written very business-like, almost like that's like a terms and conditions are in their updates of like trying to protect themselves, or all this kind of like, and then you compare it to some others, for example, mine and some others that I'm trying to emulate as well. And as you can see, it's a human, it's a person. You look at something like Inside Up Games and their update. At the bottom of their updates, they always have like a family update, and they update what's going on with their family, and they try to show that this is this is their actual family. I think that's great. Or Kids Table board games. Everything feels very genuine, honest, and real, and I think that part goes a long way. So that's step 1. Transparency, just keeping everyone in the loop, to me seems like a no-brainer. Like, if I know something, I want you to know it. There's no reason for me to withhold information. If I know it, I want you to know it, and as soon as I know it as possible. And I think people see that and really appreciate being kept in the loop. Not overly so, not like I'm not updating every day and all this kind of stuff, but I'm during the campaign or after the campaign, or there's issues, and like, I'm literally drafting an update for the Harrow County because of some parts that had some misprints, and so I'm keeping them in the loop of the, like, they're now ready. They can actually ask for these reprinted things, and we'll mail them out to backers for free. And so that's part of it. And the part of the genuine / transparency part is listening to your backers. And that sounds kind of easy, but it's a fine line of listening to backers, because you can't let them tell you what game to make or what product to make. That's where it becomes too much of a slippery slope of like, then they get disappointed because they didn't do it. You have to find a way to appreciate. It's just like playtesting a game. Everybody gives you feedback. The feedback is awesome. It's so awesome. It's gold. It's amazing. Thank you for this information. And you got to treat your backers the same way. Thank you for this information, for giving me this, your opinions. You're taking the time on your day to come on here and provide some insight or thought or direction or request. Thank you. That's great. And you got to decide what to do with it. If you shut them down and say, no, we're not doing that, it's like, well, then no one's giving feedback. No one's giving suggestions anymore. And it feels not very transparent, and I don't get it, all this kind of stuff. So somebody wanted, for example, if it's a positive one, I'll ask questions. Somebody wanted dual layered supply board in Core Discovery. And I never thought of that as an option. I'm like, is that really, would people even care? And somebody put that in the comments. And I'm like, oh, is that something people would really like? I didn't think that would be, and a bunch of people responded like, that'd be awesome. Like, that would make it feel more deluxe. That's the only component that's not deluxified in this whole deluxe box. And so I thought about it, got a quote and everything, and I shared people in an update. I'm like, we're going to do it. We're going to add a dual layer. Like that, to me, people are like, that's awesome. Like, they impacted the outcome of the game. That's what people love about Kickstarter, is the fact that they made this product better. And so listening that's a great way to respond. Sometimes some people was on the Kickstarter with making comments like, it'd be great this game if everyone had their unique goals and they were hidden from each other and blah, 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 and suggesting gameplay stuff. And you could say, no, that's not the game. That's a whole different thing. And this is the game. You could be defensive about it, just like in playtesting. Like, you don't do that. You say, that's a cool idea. It sounds like a great idea for an expansion. We're going to think about that. Like, you accept it, and people great. They listened. They took it in, even though I'm not changing the game right now. So they can see that there's a boundary, but without me saying no.
Right, because then it will come across as defensive and shut them down.
Now, that's part of it.
They're caring.
The caring, yes.
They care enough, yeah.
Thanks, yes. Now, that's part of it. The other part is I am ridiculously engaged in my campaigns. And I don't want to say that other people aren't, but I definitely see there's a spectrum of engagement the creators are, from hardly to uber engaged. And I'm closer to the uber engaged. And I'm answering anybody posts any comment anywhere on my updates or my comment section. I'm responding. I'm on there helping out. Because why not? They ask a question or whatever, or even if they have whatever, I'm on there responding to them. That's part of it. And I want to make sure the campaign is interesting and worthwhile coming back. So yes, you have stretch goals. That's one thing to do, but I also want to get engagement. And so we had a couple of contests throughout ours, which were design a gear card and design a threat card. And so this was great and was super fun to watch the community get engaged with that, because you have to kind of know the game a certain amount to be able to understand and recommend something that will work with the gameplay. And we had hundreds of entries, which was just awesome. And I get them to put them into the comments on the Kickstarter as their recommendation. My thinking in that is the algorithms and metrics that Kickstarter uses to, recommend what games are hot. This one's got a lot of attention. People are engaged. And I often do that too. I don't know if other people do this too, but when I look at a campaign, I look at how many comments are on there. And if it's 23 comments, I'm like, that doesn't look like a very exciting campaign to be a part of. And if you look and there's 642 on day 1 or day 2, you're like, whoa, this is pumping. What's going on? I think it's exciting. And I think there's a certain percentage of people that want to be in that. There's some people that just back in and go and they forget about it, and that's fine too. But the people that want to be part of it, getting part of these contests was great. I did this. I'll start with my management and say what I did for each. For my management, because of the one versus many gameplay concept, I was able to play the game one turn at a time with a picture of the board state, and I was the one and they were the many. And so they were able to talk in the comments at a certain time every day. They locked in their move, and I would update their move and reveal and tell them what the new thing was and update the art on the main page. And they got to play and actually play the game with me throughout the campaign. And if they won, they unlocked a new stretch goal thing, which is awesome. And same thing for Core of Discovery. We got to play the game twice because it's a cooperative type experience. And they were chatting in the chat of what is this? I think this has to be a rock because next to it is this. So let's go there for, no, let me, it was just a wonderful way to get people engaged about the game, and they're learning about the game, and it's just amazing. Harrow County, we couldn't do it because it's too many minutia with a 1 versus 1 type of game. So what we did puzzles. I'd put up a state, a thing, and I'd say, how can this player do this, get 4 points within the next turn? What can they do? And so they have to know the rules and answer appropriately. And there were stretch goals attached to how many got it correct, and et cetera, et cetera. So really getting people engaged. Yeah. Oh, here's an even bigger thing for my management.
Keep going.
Was the game, playing the game was great. We also had an absolute, I think we call it secret mission. Maybe not. A secret mission in the campaign where there was codes hidden everywhere. I'm talking on my website. I'm talking in folders on Dropbox and stuff like that based on finding them. I'm talking on other people's active Kickstarters. I contacted other Kickstarter creators, and they put some of these secret codes at the bottom of their page. And I said, hey, at the very least, it's going to get more eyeballs to your page. Maybe they'll back your game. Who knows? I put it in video reviews. They put these codes in their videos. They had to find these codes and deduce and decode it to unlock stretch goals. It was a wild. There was a whole group of people creating forum threads on BGG to.
This is crazy.
It was
the coolest thing I've ever heard for stretch goals.
It was.
I feel like Exploding Kittens gets so much credit for having the most creative stretch goals. I don't know if you've seen.
I can't remember what they did. But they did well.
Oh, okay, yeah, it did well. It was kind of like social stretch goals. People had to. I forget what it was. It was
take pictures.
You have to take. Yeah, take pictures of certain things, or I can't remember what it was. Or something like Batman in a bath or something weird.
Yeah.
Very abstract, and people would post on social media. And anyways, I remember that it was a while ago, but it got a lot of attention for being really creative. I want to say this is super cool. I like this even more. This is like way more, I don't know, detail and complexity to how it works in a good way. It sounds really fun.
It's fun, especially if you have a game that works that you can play with them one turn at a time, kind of like play by mail back in the old days, like actually one turn at a time. If your game works that way, it's great because they're actually playing with the design, like me, the designer, and Sen. And that's just really a fun experience to be, it's just a fun thing to do. And you can casually do it. You don't even have to comment ever. And you can just kind of come back every day, get some people coming back and seeing what happened. And I don't know how many people enjoyed that experience and never commented. I'm not sure if that's a low number or a decent number. I have no idea, but I just know it creates a lot of excitement in the comments section.
And it's probably really fun for you to think that up.
It's super
I'm
fun.
assuming.
It's super fun.
Yeah.
It's always part of my campaign creation process is what are my engagement ideas and goals? How can what's on brand? Like for my management, it's all about psychic espionage. So we had this big espionage game of trying to find all these secret codes all over the place that felt on brand. Harrow County didn't have the same kind of thing for secret codes and stuff like that. So we did the puzzles, and then Core Discovery was just a no-brainer to do.
I like that a lot. It's really cool. It's a cool thing to think about for a creator. What are the things that are on brand or on theme that could generate more engagement for the campaign? It's a question that I think, if asked, could lead to some really cool things happening on the campaign.
Yeah, exactly. That's always, I wish I could have done even more with Core Discovery. Sometimes I'm a little pinched because I have to license the IP from creators. And so you're maybe limited in some ways of what you can and can't do. The first two, I had a lot of leeway. The third one, I had leeway actually, but it's with, I had to deal with Skybound. First two were directly with the creators themselves. And so it's a lot more casual and informal. I'm like, hey, can I do this? Yeah, sure. Let's do it. And it's all fun. And the third one, still fun and everything's fine. And absolutely no knock against Skybound because they were great. But it's just another layer and another red tape thing you have to go through. And it slows the process down and you can't do things on the dime and it's turn on a dime type thing.
So what's next for you? What's got your focus now?
Well, I'll tell a quick story about a time I went to the Toronto Film Festival and I saw a movie that at least starred Keanu Reeves, but I think it might have even been directed by Keanu Reeves possibly, or produced, or at the very least. And he came out afterwards and did a Q&A. I was, everyone's excited. It's Keanu Reeves and stuff. And one of the first questions, maybe the second question, because a Q&A, anybody can ask a question. Some moron asked, what are you working on next? And he's like, you know what? I just kind of want to focus on this because this is the movie that's, it's not even out. You're the first people to see this movie. And this is where I want to put my energy right now. And I like that answer because everyone always wants to know what's next and nobody wants to talk about what's happening right now. And so, and I get it because it feels like a scoop and it feels like news and it feels like, you want to get that excitement. But in the same vein, I want to keep all the attention focused on this because the late pledge is still open, for example. So I want to keep all the attention on Core Discovery. And then by the time we close the late pledge, then around then we start to announce the next title to get people excited about that. So we have two comics signed to turn into games. I'm not sure which one's going to be first of those two either. One is an asymmetric game that is going to be awesome. And then another one is a smaller card game because we want to try to hit more price points. I'm super excited that Core Discovery got down to a $40 price point compared to the $60 and $65 from my management in Harrow County. So that's exciting. But now to get down to a $25 or $30 game will be nice to have. In December, I'm starting to go to my first conventions to have an actual booth. So I'm going to be actually selling product. And so I was just trying to foresee that and be like, I don't want to just go there and sell $60 games. That's a tough haul. Some people want to support you, but they're like, I can't support you with $60 game every time. But if I had a $30 game, 20, 25, that kind of stuff, that's a lot easier.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing everything with us, with the podcast. And I learned a ton. I always learn a lot from this, but I got to say, like, how you do the engagement was probably one of the coolest things for me to hear. It was really, really cool. So I really appreciate you sharing that and along with your whole entire story too. So thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much.